What's going on, everybody? Episode 190 of the White Cat Outdoors podcast, bringing you to the table while we talk about the outdoors. This week, finally, after a long hiatus, Tom is back in studio. Joined with Tom, we also have our good buddy, Austin the Babe Enterline. Austin's been becoming more of a regular on the podcast lately, maybe even more than Tom. He's a good buddy of ours, hunts with us. He's got a lease over in Ohio, so we like to razz him about that too. But this week, we're talking about shot placement, but more than just shot placement. It's also based on how high up you are in the tree, how far the deer is away from your stand, and also just the orientation of the deer. Along with that, we also got to dive in, do some cliff notes of some past buck stories, which is always fun. We hope you guys enjoy them because we enjoy talking about them. But I think at this point, I'm going to quit rambling, and let's get tuned in to this week's episode.
So I did the cardinal sin. I pull up my bow, and then I look dead at his antlers. I got out of the truck, and when I slammed the door, I heard gobbles all around me.
Let's see it.
Alaska, moose, spot and stalk. That is the bucket list. I agree.
White Cat Outdoors. White Cat Outdoors.
Hey, gang. It's good to be back. Tom has finally joined us. After 6 months, he's finally back in the studio.
Thanks for inviting me over tonight, guys. Glad to be back.
Yeah, we're happy to have
course.
you. And we got another, well, I guess Nick's here too, but as I'm sure everyone assumed that.
Yeah, I'm actually the only one with perfect attendance over almost 4 years.
It is. Are we coming up on 4 years?
Mhm.
Wow, that's a long time. That's whack. But Austin's here too.
Hello.
Austin, you gotta get up on the mic.
Oh, okay.
Austin loves standing way back from the mic. That's
Yeah,
his favorite.
Just hanging out today.
He's still wet behind the ears on the podcast. I feel like I still am half the time, to be honest. Before we jump into it, I do want to just take a second to say what a successful White Cat Palooza we had.
Oh man, I had a great time.
We had our buddy John came all the way up from Ohio. That still blows my mind that he made the trip.
I didn't think he was going to make it, but he did. I'm glad he did.
Yeah,
He
I
had a
thought it
good
was
time.
more of a, maybe we'll stop out and then never see
one
him.
of those things like someone's like, oh yeah, I really want to come, and then they never show up, but he did it.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming up. We had a blast with you. Open invite for next year. So glad you can make it out. Hope you had a good time. Our buddy Jacob made it out.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty sweet. He's not far though, so that's not as impressive, but still awesome that he made it up.
Yeah.
We didn't get snake hunt with him this year, which I'm a little bummed out about, but he was showing me pictures. He went snake hunting this year.
Oh yeah.
Which I thought was super cool because it's like took him out once and then he went out and he found some snakes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
he said Emma was telling me that they went out and she said they caught like 6 snakes the one spot they went to.
Yeah, he went to one of the power lines we went to.
Oh really?
Yeah. So that was pretty sweet that they got on him.
Mm-hmm.
Made me happy that maybe we taught him something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Turns out we do know what we're doing sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like I know snakes pretty well at this point.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little bit easier to figure out than big bucks, though.
Yeah, no doubt.
Speaking of big bucks, season's getting real close.
It is. We're all excited. Austin's not excited, but
Oh, I'm excited, Frank.
Austin had to go ahead and plan a Nickelback concert the day before opening day.
He sure did.
That couldn't be a better kickstart to hunting season right there. So,
Do you think we could talk old Nickelback into playing like Spirit of the Wild or like Fred Bear or something like to end the concert so like I can hear that and then
right into the woods.
you might
like-
play the 30-point buck.
Maybe I don't. We'll see. We'll have to. I'll hold
Brantley
it.
Gilbert, that's probably more up his alley.
Yeah.
And he's opening, so if Brantley could play that, and then Nickelback played little Ted Nugent.
I think we're getting our hopes pretty high for that.
Yeah.
I'll send him a DM and see what happens.
Say, hey, I'm coming to see you the day before archery season. Just play Fred Bear real quick.
So I know Austin's going straight from the concert to his lease in Ohio. I don't know how far it is from there.
I think it's like 3 hours.
So by the time we
Before.
get out of that, you're pretty much just going to go pretty much
You're
pack your
jumping in a
shit and go
stand.
in the stand.
Yeah.
'Cause, like,
yeah.
I know we're a good 2 hours once you get on the road, and it's
Yeah.
an hour and a half, 2 hours to get out of the concert.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm going to sleep because I'm going to sleep on the way back because Tom told me he'd drive. So
Biggest mistake of his life.
yeah, but so I'm hoping to sleep a little bit in the car on the way back, then grab my stuff and just get an early jump on things because if I try to sleep when I get home,
You're going to stay asleep.
yeah. And then
Austin's been trying to talk me into going, but I don't think I'm going to make it.
I'm just not man enough.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Come on, Frank.
I do like Nickelback.
When could you get another chance to see Nickelback the day before opening day archery?
I wish it was 2 days before. That would be ideal.
No.
Mm.
You
I
get your
think
blood
the,
pumping.
the excitement of the concert would wear off by then.
I can tell you right now, if I shoot a buck Saturday morning, I'm probably never going to listen to anything but Nickelback on the way to the stand.
Yeah.
It's going to be 100%. Usually it's Fred Bear.
Might have to change it up.
What if Nickelback did play Fred Bear that night, though?
If that happens, I think I would have superpowers. Because
What if they just did it completely unprompted? They're just
That's
like,
what I'm
you know,
saying.
we've never done this before, but we're about to smack you in the face with some Fred Bear.
get ready for a phone call because you're going to have to hear it live to understand that it actually happened.
Yeah. I wouldn't believe you if I
No,
didn't.
no, I wouldn't believe it if I saw it. Would have thought I maybe had too many Fireball test tubes.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be yelling Fred Bear like people yell Freebird at a concert.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So anyways, we've probably lost half the people listening by now because they don't give a shit about Nickelback. But anyways,
You don't like Nickelback, then fuck you.
yeah, I was going to say go back to Canada, but that's where they are. So you stay out of Canada.
You're not welcome.
Hey, get some syrup. So this week we wanted to, as the season approaches, we're getting really close. People should be shooting their bows. So I wanted to talk about shot placement, but more than just generic shot placement, more as it changes depending on your tree height and distance away from the tree that the deer is standing, as well as a little bit of, quartering away, quartering to, straight facing, which is very, what's the word that's
Controversial.
controversial? That's exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I figured we just do a round table discussion, kind of hit a few different yardages and talk about how high we like to hunt, kind of go from there. I guess I'll start off just so you guys have a second to think about it. But I've killed bucks everywhere from about 6 yards out to about 35. Over the years, I've gotten a taste for closer. I like bucks inside 15. I think 6 is a little close, but it works. So I guess my first talk, I'm going to go close range, like inside 10.
Yeah. I've killed 2 bucks inside 10.
It's exhilarating, but margin for error is very small.
I think that shot is the hardest shot to make on a deer.
Yeah, when it comes to like hitting where you need to, because
Yeah.
hitting a target at 35 yards out is easy, but the problem is your target moves. So it's it's challenging in a different way, I
Yes.
guess.
Yeah, I think as far as the spot you're aiming at,
Yeah,
it's the smallest spot to hit when they're right under you.
yeah, I agree. So I'm just gonna revert back to last season because that was my closest I've ever killed a buck, and he was at about 6 yards. And when they're that close like that, I aim about 1.5 inches away from the spine, 2 inches maybe. And basically what that's doing, because if you aim center of the chest, you're gonna clip one lung and go straight out through the
you'll hit
brisket.
the bottom of the lung. Like,
Yeah,
not
you're gonna
get
let's say
much.
you're gonna clip the lung. It's gonna go running off, and you'll never find that deer.
Yeah, that's happened. The first deer that I shot really close, I was young at the time. I think I was 15 or 16. I did exactly that. I aimed just a little bit too low. I got a little too far from the spine, got one lung, and that deer went a little over a mile, and we did end up finding it, but it was...
I'm good on you for staying on it, because I know a lot of people wouldn't continue tracking that far.
Yeah, I mean, it was bleeding good the whole time.
Oh, yeah,
But-
and they say on a one-lung deer you should push them.
Yeah.
Like, that's the
Wear 'em
only way
down.
you're going to get on it.
Yeah.
Because if you keep that wound open, it keeps bleeding,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually you'll wear them out. It's not ideal, but it's better than letting them get infected in 2 months and then die.
Yeah, exactly.
But so that deer was perfectly broadside, which definitely makes it a lot easier because it opens it up a little bit. But like I said, I aimed about 1.5 to 2 inches below the spine, and with your 20-yard pin, you're not actually putting it at that point. So that's another thing people have to practice. If you're going to take that kind of shot, you have to understand that most people have a 10 or a 20-yard pin.
Mm-hmm.
My 20-yard pin is hitting like 1.5 to 2 inches high at 10 yards. And then it stays really flat from like 20 almost to 30. Like, it's very flat. So I aim about, my pin's about 4 inches below the spine, but I'm hitting about 2
your
inches.
pin's probably damn near off the deer.
Yeah. And then what happened with my buck is I went right through the top of the first lung, down through, hit the second, but I guess he must have been quartering a little bit because I sliced the liver a little bit as well.
I think it helps a lot when they're close like that to have them quartered away a little bit.
Yeah, he must have
It
been
gives
quartered
you
a little
bit
bit.
more to pass through rather than just touching the lungs. And if you miss a little bit, you're getting one lung, whereas if they're quartered and you miss a little bit, you're going to clip liver and lung.
Yeah. So I always, like, it worked really well for me. Like, that deer ran 60, 70 yards or so. And I mean, good blood the entire way. Arrow, I had a full pass through, which was really nice because that's another great thing too, is when they're that close, if you get a full pass through, your exit hole is like at the bottom of their chest cavity, so you don't have, there's no like wait period for it to fill up a little bit before it starts draining out. So 25, 30 yards out, when you shoot, they're pretty flat.
Yeah.
And sometimes they might run for 30, 40 yards before you find blood. Now you can follow, a disruption in the leaves or in the grass, but makes it really...
they'll bleed a little bit from the flesh wound.
But it always seems, like I shot a doe earlier in the year that was at about 20 yards, and I had like blooded impact, and then there was nothing until we got into the woods. So just another thing to kind of consider, and one of the pluses. I guess I can't really tell people, like, I wouldn't recommend, those 6-yard shots unless you've extensively practiced for it.
Yeah.
But it's
And
very
practice
effective.
it from the air. Like, just shooting a
that's what I
10-yard
mean.
pin on the ground is not... I mean,
No.
it's good practice. It feels weird shooting at 10 yards. Like, why the hell am I doing this? Like,
Yeah.
But it's definitely a necessity if you plan on shooting something like that to shoot from a stand, up in the air. Because your arrow does a very different thing when it's at that steep of an angle.
Yeah, and I can't remember, and there's hundreds of people that have said this, but I can't remember who was the first one to tell me this. When I was probably just getting started in bow hunting, 13 years old or so. And I've always been told, aim for your exit hole. And that is so crucial too, even at that close distance, because when you're aiming, you're trying to hit 2 inches behind the spine there, off the side of the spine. If you draw a straight line from the tip of your arrow to there and then where it's coming out, that's kind of what you're aiming at, is actually where your exit's at.
Yeah.
I guess I always try to focus more on where do I think that arrow is going to leave the deer, and put my pin there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my close range deal. I've really, every close range deer I've shot was always pretty much broadside, maybe a little quartering away. I don't think I'm comfortable enough to take a 6-yard shot quartering too.
Yeah, the two that I've killed, the one was broadside and the other one was quartering away a little bit. But
They're that
quartering
close.
two, that's risky business. There's a whole lot of shoulder there.
I would probably just wait
Yeah.
and wait that hope he comes broadside or catch him past. But Tom, I know you shot some deer a little bit further out, and one specifically, your first archery buck, I was hoping you'd bring up just because of the way that deer was standing.
You didn't want to hear about my up close and personal buck that I shot at 6 or 7 yards. It's actually the biggest one ever taken off the climber farm.
Well, I want to hear about that one too, but I guess while we're on close range, we could talk about that one.
So this
But make
wa-
it quick.
This was November 13th, peak rut, and I'll make it quick. Basically, I had this buck chasing a doe and grunted him too close. I don't like those close range shots. Grunted him basically right underneath my tree stand, and he was pretty much perfectly broadside. And I put my pin right in basically in the middle of the chest cavity, knowing that, you know, at that close range, I'm going to be
Close
3
to the
inches
spine.
high. So I'm going to be, you know, right below the spine.
That's all about knowing your equipment too and practicing early in the year.
And I shot this deer. Nick actually wasn't even there with us. It was just me and Frank holding the
Yeah.
fort down.
Yeah, we were
I
doing
don't
it.
even remember what I was doing that morning.
Sleeping.
No, I wasn't even at camp.
Yeah, you're sleeping in. I think you're actually hunting PA.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you did come up later.
Because it was a Saturday morning, and you came up and we hunted Sunday. But I had already killed a buck in PA, so that's why I wasn't hunting PA on Saturday.
I hadn't. I was just. I was on a good one up there.
Were you?
No.
As you say, you were on the road.
I might have been. It's tough
So-
to say.
Anyway, hit him perfect, right below the spine, middle, in between the haunches, I guess you could call it. And it actually,
So like back long liver ish.
yeah. So what happened was I hit right where I wanted to, and I was using these Rage expandables, and I now know that if you hit a rib or something, it's going to deflect your arrow.
Yeah, quite
And
a bit.
I have video proof of this from a buck I killed earlier. But I hit high just like I wanted and deflected and came out like back of the liver, front of the guts. And the intestines like plugged up that exit hole. So we got there and there was no blood at all.
We were worried.
Yeah.
There was nothing.
And so we just kind of
So what are you feeling at that point?
shit. Because I found my arrow and there was lung blood on the arrow but there was white hair. And I'm like, did I come out like
Middle of his brisket.
Middle-
You're thinking maybe you hit like clip one lung and then hit brisket.
yeah. And so we're walking around and I can see some disturbed leaves. And my adrenaline was pumping so hard I didn't really know exactly where this buck ran. But-
You've been known to be really bad at doing that.
I know what direction they go. I just don't know how they
You know
got
left
there.
and right from which side. Like if sitting in the tree, you know if they went left or right. That's about all you can give. 180 degrees left or 180 degrees right.
But I told Frank, I said, he ran around the edge of this food plot. Turned out he ran right through the middle of it. But I'm like, he ran around the edge, and the last place I saw him was there, and then I heard some crashing. So I'm like, let's just walk around the edge of this food plot and see if I can't see where I last saw him, and just try and go from there. So we walk right around the edge, right where I think this deer's running. There was still no blood.
Shocker.
And we get to the tip, and I look down, and he's piled up right where I basically heard the crash. And we got up to the deer, and we're like, let's try and figure out what the heck happened. So we backtracked, and it was a freaking bloodbath from like where the deer died all the way back to like he probably didn't open up for what, 50 yards?
I was gonna say probably about 50 yards before he started bleeding, and then he was.
So what happened? Why did you jump off of the disturbance in the leaves? And
Because we lost it.
Oh, okay.
We followed that for about 30 yards, and then we had nothing.
Yeah.
so he probably cut up on the trail, which would be tougher to see any disturbance.
Yeah,
A million
exactly.
deer tracks on that trail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But hit him just how I wanted, but just a little bit of fat or intestines plugged up that hole. But once the blood pushed it out of the way, it opened up like,
Well, you got a man's broadhead this year, so
yeah,
none of that happened.
yeah. No deflection.
Nice. Frank,
What?
I know you also like up close and personal.
Well, I was kind of joining right in with you when we were talking about it. Like I said, I killed 2 of them, and both of them went.
Austin.
I was gonna say, yeah, Austin. What's your closest archery kill?
I'm same boat with you. I think my last buck I got with my Matthews bow was
I Oh,
Shameless plug.
plugging Matthews. Look at him go.
Sponsored, but no, it was like 6 yards. I mean, straight underneath me. And I was just waiting for him to turn, and he just kept walking directly at my stand.
So he's you've got like a hard court, like pretty much walking straight at you.
Yeah. I was waiting for him to cut off, kind of like the trail I was on, and he never did. And I stopped him, and then he just looked around, and then he looked up, and I had a direct shot right down through his chest. And
So you
So that
shot
was
you
more of
took
a
a
frontal
you took a
shot.
frontal shot.
yeah,
Full
6
frontal.
yards.
So run us through that, because I know it's a controversial shot, and
Yeah,
I've
I
only
probably-
done it with a muzzleloader.
Yeah.
But and Tom I know has done it with a rifle. But tell us a little bit about where you were aiming and why, and then we'll go down the blood trail and everything.
I was kind of, I mean, where he was standing, I was trying to aim right down towards his heart.
Okay. So understanding like deer anatomy, that's really important too, and understanding that heart doesn't, it actually cants to the left if you're looking. I believe it's to the left. I'm trying to think now.
If you're riding on its back, it's to the left.
Yeah.
So if he's facing you, it would be to the right.
Yeah. I think.
I don't
Now I've got to look at a
It's
map.
on his left side.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, not on, it cants to his left side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that. Now I got to brush up on that to be sure. But
Yeah.
I always study anatomy like the left. Like
Yeah, I can
first,
tell.
No, I'm saying like first couple weeks I brush up on it
Yeah.
before the season starts. But anyways, go ahead. So you're aiming for the heart.
Yeah, so anyway, I kind of stopped him. He looked left and right, and then he looked directly up at me. So he's like leaning back. So I had a nice shot right down.
How
Bottom of his
high
neck.
up? You're right at like the base of his neck.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Kind of like just above this, that I guess
The
like the
sternum.
sternum there.
Right. And then I took the shot, and he just spun around. I saw that my fletching's sticking out, so I didn't make a clean pass through. And he just ended
How
up
much was
taking
your
off.
arrow sticking out?
It was probably about 2 inches, just for
So
the
you
fletch.
got
Just for the
30
fletch.
inches
Oh, so
of
you
penetration.
you
Yeah.
buried an arrow
Oh,
inside
yeah.
there.
And then I just saw blood gushing out. He took off about 80 yards in the woods, and I heard a crash, and it was getting towards dark, so I couldn't see what was going on too much. And yeah, so I let him sit for an hour or so. I went and got my sister, and we went and looked for it, and it was laying right where I heard the crash.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Good blood trail the whole way then.
Did
yeah.
you get his heart?
I can't remember. I didn't end up butchering it. I took it to the butcher shop, and I ended up pulling my arrow out, and it was still in there somewhere, and I don't know what happened with it. So,
And if you, especially inside 100, it was. I'm sure you either sliced both lungs or the heart.
yeah,
if
it
not
was a
both.
G5
Or at least take the-
Montec is what I was using.
Those are nice broadheads.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
are. I think all of us have shot those at one point. Pretty sure.
I haven't shot the G5s. Montec makes another one. They're like the G5s are like skeletonized.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that I shot were solid.
Mm.
I don't know what those ones are called, but I have shot G5s and I do like those broadheads.
Yeah.
I shot those right before I switched to Annihilators because they're kind of a similar build.
And then you switched off Annihilators now.
Yeah, now I'm on to the Grizzly sticks.
I wish you would have bought 125 XLs because I've been like,
Throw 'em my way.
hit your boy up.
They're 125s, but they're not XLs.
They should probably fly the same. I guess if I get wild this year and need some extra broadheads, I'll tell you.
Start throwing them all over the place.
Yeah. So I guess we'll move on a little bit further. Kind of like that sweet spot, like the 15 to 20.
That's my wheelhouse. That's where I would try to just set up everything for 15 to. I like it under 20.
Yeah, I'm an under 20 guy, more like 12 to 17-ish, I guess. A lot of it just depends on what tree I can get into, but I would much prefer inside 20 than 20 to 30. So my next one was right around that 20-yard mark. And this one I killed at a buddy's camp, and I actually had a couple opportunities to shoot this buck, but being the immature bow hunter at the time, just didn't take the opportunities when they had presented themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I first saw the buck at about 30, and he was broadside. At that time, I was not comfortable taking a 30-yard shot, knowing that it was 30. I've shot my furthest buck was 35, and I guessed him, and I did, got the buck and everything, but my range is not great, like guessing. But anyway, this buck was at like 30 yards or so, and I just didn't like it. You know, there was a lot of limbs kind of hanging down, and I was like, I don't really understand the arc on this bow. Like, let's just wait it out, see what happens. Well, he turns on a dime and does what your buck did. Just walks right at me. And he got to about 7, still walking right at me. I'm like, don't like that shot either. Like, so we're just going to wait this out. And he's like staring at me. And I'm just sitting there shaking. And I actually filmed. This was my first buck I filmed. And I'm sitting there shaking in the sand, watching this deer, and then finally he turns around. And then he got to about 15 to 20 yards, somewhere in there, walking straight away. And I shot, basically I was aiming a little high and at like like right behind the last rib, because he was walking almost straight away from me. And unfortunately, when I shot, I was shooting like a big Rage broadhead, cuts like 2.5 inches. And when I hit, I like just sliced something in the vertebrae as it was passing through, because I got a full pass through with my first arrow, but I like sliced something and he just dropped right there. And I think I've told the story. I ended up having to shoot it again, but we won't get into that part. But it was like, had I been shooting a fixed blade, it wouldn't have hit that vertebrae. But like once I cut it open and everything, like to gut it, and could see that I got a full pass where I went right through the back of the liver, hit one lung, and then like sliced one part of the heart open. So it was like, I took out almost everything. There was one lung that was untouched. But that was a tough shot, but another one that like I shoot my bow a lot. This year I will admit I've been lacking a little bit. But I like it's when they're inside 20, it just makes it a lot easier to there's less to screw up, and the deer has a lot less time to react.
And when they're like at that 15 yards, you're not at such a steep angle that you're worrying about the shoulder blade and the spine. Like you can still get both lungs very easily on a broadside shot without worrying about that.
That also changes because we aren't 30 foot in a tree. You know,
I like to hunt low as possible.
Yeah, I'm more of like usually like 10 to 12.
That's where I typically at about 10.
Which, I mean, people say is low, but at the same time, most ladder stands are right around 10, 12 foot. You know, I know they make some tall ones, they're like 16. But I have 4 sticks, and most of the time I'm only 2 or 3 sticks high. That's just works for me. A lot of it's just getting to the cover. Early season, I hunt way lower just because there's so much foliage and everything I can get behind. As the season progresses, and even if there's still some leaves on the tree, once I get to the rut and I'm sitting all day, I do like to get a little bit higher, because you can get away with a little bit more movement-wise if you can get up higher. But there's a fine line before you start getting too high, and then your shot angle is shit.
I had one deer like that years ago. It's the only deer I've ever wounded. I was hunting somebody else's stand on the edge of a field, and as soon as I got up in it, I was like, this is a lot higher than I would prefer to be. And I didn't love it right off the bat, but I hunted the evening, and a nice buck came in, and I knew I was up high. I was like, I got to kind of creep up a little bit closer to his shoulder blade, and I ended up hitting his shoulder blade, didn't get that deer. To my knowledge, it lived. Never found it. But that's why after that, I was like, I'm never hunting that high again. Like I know it's a very makeable shot.
Yeah, and it's all what you practice for and what you're comfortable at.
Exactly.
If you're not confident hunting low, then by all means do what puts you in the best opportunity to shoot a buck.
Yeah. But for me, my confidence is hunting low and shooting 15 to 20 yards.
Yeah. Tommy, I think your first archery buck falls into this category of the 15 to 20. And I'd like you to talk about that one, because that was kind of a funky shot that you had to take on that buck.
That was not 15. That was about 8 yards.
Oh, really? I thought that was like 18.
No, that was another one. My calling skills are just superb. And I snort wheezed this buck in from probably about 80 yards. I seen him out. I seen a
Is this
doe.
big, like mature dominant buck? Or?
Yeah, very mature. I seen a doe earlier, and this was also right in the rut. I think it was like October 28th. I saw a doe walking this trail first light, and then about 15 minutes after that, I saw a buck walking.
Just rack coming through.
No, he was a climber buck. And-
Early climber buck. You can't call him a climber buck anymore.
Yeah. And so I'm like, all right, these deer are just following that doe trail. So I snort wheezed at him, trying to entice him. And that buck paid no mind, but there was another buck somewhere nearby that heard. And he came charging in, ears pinned back, hair on his neck, standing up, ready for a fight. And I was on a cherry tree with absolutely no cover. I was on a like when they say, "Oh, you're hunting on a telephone pole," I was actually on a telephone pole. It was great. Cherry tree in the middle of the hardwoods, but it was the spot to be. So I did get up a little bit higher. I was probably 20 feet, just because I have that ability with a climber.
Mm-hmm.
And he came inside of 10 yards, and he's quartering to me fairly hard.
But he was also kind of like looking away or back, or wasn't there something weird going on with like the way his body was
Yeah,
positioned?
he was kind of in like a C shape.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically I tried to tuck it as close to that front shoulder, like the back side of that front shoulder as I could, just so I could get both lungs. And I don't know, he had me, I got to like 3/4 draw on this buck, and he stares dead nuts right at me. So
That's where all the weight's at on your butt.
that's
too.
where all the weight's at. So
Right at the let off.
So I'm trembling and waiting for him to move, but he's not moving. He's just staring at me. And I'm like, either I let this bow all the way down and he's going to take off and run, or I finish the draw and see what happens. So I decide, finish the draw, and he does one of those like head bob things, and it gives me just enough time to get the pin on him and touch the release. And in hindsight, probably definitely rushed the shot. Just
Well, you were only probably 14 or 15 at the time. You weren't driving at that time. I think I was driving us up there.
yeah, probably. So anyway, I missed my mark. If the deer was facing broadside, it looked like I missed the mark by a freaking foot. But with the angle he was at, I really only missed it by a couple inches. I ended up actually going in front of the front shoulder, like through the base of the neck and out both lungs.
Behind the shoulder on the far
Behind
side.
the shoulder on the
Which-
far side.
Even though I commend you for admitting that it wasn't what you were trying to do.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of people, especially on podcasts, want to admit when they screw up. But every single person sitting at this table has had it happen. And pretty much, if you've been hunting long enough and you listen, I guarantee there's a story in the back of your mind that you're thinking of right now saying, yeah, I screwed up too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it ended up being probably where you should have aimed, I guess. If you
Yeah. No, it worked out well. He only ran probably 120 maybe.
Yeah.
And it was all downhill, so I think it kind of kept his momentum going.
Yeah, and as soon as he hit the red brush there, he was
done.
Yeah, he pretty much made a death run to the bottom and died right at the line.
Yeah, that was that nice 10.
Yeah.
You're an idiot.
Yeah, Tom.
I forgot that's what you said.
Yeah, Tom texted everybody, said he shot a nice 10. It's like it was probably like the third buck that had been killed on the farm. So like we went from like everybody shooting 4 corners, and Tom's like, yeah, I shot a nice 10.
Well, your dad saw one the day before,
Yeah,
right where you were at. Was it the day before or the week before?
the week before. But that's why I went there,
Mm-hmm.
because my dad wasn't there.
So we were all like, heck yeah. So we get all up there, and I'm like, one.
That ain't no
two, I think
10.
it was a 5.
Yeah.
Halfway
He had
there.
some good palmation and shit going on.
Hey,
though.
that was kind of a neat rack.
Would have been interesting to see what he grew into.
Yeah. Oh, you can go check it on the wall, see what he turned into. He's
Yeah.
still there.
Yeah, he's still growing.
Yeah.
Austin, where's your wheelhouse? What do you
For height wise in a tree?
height wise in a tree and distance for your shots? Like when you're setting your stand, and you're because I know you use your climber a lot, and I know you're getting into the lock on game this year.
Yeah.
But when you're picking a spot out, where are you looking to try and place that deer from you, and then how high are you going?
normally I like to get up pretty high, like 18, 20, somewhere in
Okay.
that area. But
You're one of those guys.
yeah,
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
no, but I might tone it down a little bit, stay a little lower. But I mean, I usually practice with my bow at like 40 yards all the time, so I'm comfortable doing 30-yard shots. And
What's like bread and butter where you're like,
You
this
set up
deer
your
this deer is
stands
in
to-
serious trouble if he walks in this range.
yeah, 20 or 30. all
Okay, so you're
day.
20 to 30. So you like them a little bit further out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, I feel like
I mean,
if they're
20 's
right
not
underneath
far.
me, there's more movement they could pick up. But I mean, it all depends where I'm at, what time of year. But I mean, 20 to 30 is pretty good. That's what I'm comfortable with. But
I
yeah,
think all of us are comfortable out to 30.
Mhm.
I want to try
but-
and shoot 40 this year. But I mean, I'm not gonna try and make a risky shot. But I would be comfortable.
I know
shooting 40.
there's several people like that I know that will consistently have hit deer at 40. The problem is there's so much. Everything you do could be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, your arrow could go exactly where you want it, but that deer could do a whole lot between
Yeah.
now and then.
so there's a lot you have to pay attention to. Like, definitely don't want at 40. You don't want their head down.
Yeah.
Um,
I found that out last year when my dad missed the one that he shot.
mhm.
He ended up getting it in late rifle season, but in archery season he had a crossbow and he was staying about 30 yards and he had the head down. He was feeding.
You and I were talking about that like a
Yeah.
couple days before.
He's got a
it
video
happened.
of it too. He doesn't like to show too many people, but
It was weird. You were at camp with us, and we were discussing the whole head up, head down thing, and then it
Mm-hmm.
was like a couple days later. You're like, dude,
it's insane how much they could drop with their head down, and
Mm-hmm.
they hear that little click or arrow coming at them, and they just hit the ground.
you say like his belly was like in the dirt.
It
like,
was. I mean, it was.
almost.
He
and-
just totally dropped within 30 or 40 yards, however far it was. But yeah, always make sure their head's up before you try to make a farther shot.
and then a lot of I've also done a lot of reading, and guys will aim at like bottom of the heart, at those deeper distances, and their thing, their theory behind it is if they jump your string, it's a clean miss, no harm, no foul.
Yeah.
If they don't move, you're hitting the heart. If they do drop, there's way more room for it to hit.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's a risky shot, and I do my best not to
Yeah, I've
put
never
myself in that opportunity.
I've never liked the idea of
Aiming for where
aiming-
they might be.
yeah.
It's-
and like
yeah.
that's why I don't even like shooting that far because I don't even want to have to think about that. I want to, and not to say a deer can't jump a string at closer distances. I mean, it makes it a lot fucking harder, but
When you're gonna have a recurve, which is gonna
yeah,
make it
I'm-
even easier.
Yeah, I'm definitely shrinking the distance a little bit this year, which isn't a big deal because I always set up to shoot closer anyway, so it won't change how I do anything. But yeah, that's never sat well with me. I know a lot of people do it. I know it works, but
It's something you're not
aiming-
confident with it, so you
Yeah.
don't do it. And I think that's important that you understand that. And
yeah, aiming where I don't want to hit and where I'm thinking they're going to be, I don't love it. That's just it's weird in my mind. Like I said, I know people do it and it works, but I can't get myself to do it.
And it's not really like you've killed plenty of bucks, and it's not like I don't know. I don't look at it like when I set up my stand, and I've had bucks come through and they were out of range. I don't come back to camp kicking rocks saying, "Man, I wish I would have just taken a 40-yard shot," or if he. I don't look at it that way. I just
No.
I
He
had a
was out
buck
of
come through.
range.
He was out of range. I don't wish I had a crossbow that could poke a little bit more, or wish I had more range out of my bow. Like, my distance is what it is. If they aren't in that, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I hope I meet up with them again.
Mm-hmm.
kinda-
Exactly.
I don't get too bent out of shape about it. I had a buck a few years ago that I had a clean broadside shot at 40 yards, or 40, 45, 40, somewhere in there, and just didn't like it. I was like, that's too far. I mean, he was literally like hitting a licking branch. Like, I mean, he was wide open,
Clueless.
and but I don't regret not taking that shot. He followed the trail that I thought he was going to, which was going to give me a 25-yard shot, which was really what I wanted. But I'd never been in that spot before, and I didn't realize there was a stream, like it was more of like a drainage ditch off the back of this pond. And just because of the weeds, I had no idea that there was that drainage there. And my only opening was at that drainage ditch, and I didn't know it until the buck was, he's at 25 yards but behind a tree. I draw back, and instead of walking into my lane, he jumps over this drainage ditch and out of my life. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it totally baffled me. I was like, I'm sitting there at full draw, and that's only the first time and hopefully the last that I'm sitting there at full draw and didn't get to touch a release.
I guarantee it will not be the last.
I hope it is. I get that fries me. Like, I have no problem if a buck comes through 45, I don't get a shot. But if I draw it back,
He better be
I
dead.
don't like letting a bow down. I like to fire it. So anyway, it happens. Like you said, realistically, it's probably going to happen again.
Yeah.
But yeah. Tom, you got any other buck stories of kind of weird distances or anything that you wanted to talk about, or
I'll
scenarios?
just talk about one real briefly. This was a buck 3 years ago. It was actually my first opportunity at shooting my target buck that I had patterned all summer. And so this one stings. And I have this food plot. He was coming out religiously about an hour before dark, all the way up until opening day. And I knew first time I had the correct wind, I was going to go in there and I was going to kill this buck. Well, I didn't get that wind on our Saturday opener, so I waited until I think it was Tuesday and got that right wind, snuck in, and sure enough, hour before dark, here he comes. And I'm freaking pumped. And another buck that I was familiar with, but he wasn't on my target list, comes out. And this was actually, I think it was like October 8th. And if someone would have dropped me in that stand and not told me what day it was, I would have thought it was like November 5th. Because these two bucks started fighting. I heard snort wheezing, and they were aggressively fighting, not just like...
Not just tying up real quick to see what it's all about.
Yeah. And so the big 9 that I was after starts chasing this other buck away, and now it's getting close to dark, and I'm like, shit, I'm not going to get a shot. And then he starts coming back the other way, and I'm like, all right, this is
Now or
my
never.
chance. Yeah. So he comes through at like, it was 33 yards, and it's my mistake, but I drew back, and he was walking with a purpose. He was pissed off, and I stopped him, and he looked dead at me, and I put the pin, right behind the front shoulder, middle of the chest, and I shot, and he ducked the arrow, and I ended up hitting what they call that no man's land in between the spine and the top of the lungs. And got trail cam photos of him in muzzleloader. Could never connect with him again, but
Yeah, it stings.
But knowing now, how's the saying go? Knowing now what I didn't know then.
Yeah.
It was pretty stupid to stop a buck, especially a mature buck at 33 yards.
Mm-hmm.
and expect to get a good shot with no reaction. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just one of them things where it's controlling your emotions in the stand in that moment is one of the hardest things to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, when it gets easy and I'm not excited, that's probably when I'll hang mine up for good. Like I that jacked feeling and the excitement, the adrenaline, like that's what I'm out there for. And I've gotten better at like managing it and calming myself down.
Yeah,
like
the more you do it, the more you're able to manage it. And in those situations where you're super amped, you can still look at it and
like
say, I know what to do here. I know where he's at. I know how he's feeling. I shouldn't stop him right now. Or I should wait till he gets right here and stop him. Or right now is the time to stop him.
I think one thing that's helped me a lot with that, and I don't know if you guys do this or not, but from the time I get into the stand until dark or until I get out, the whole time I'm up there, I am playing through scenarios of, okay, a buck comes down the hill, he comes right here, like, and I just kind of mentally play the game of,
What if?
yeah, like, okay, what if he comes from behind me? What am I going to do? I think he's going to go this way. Like, and I just play those scenarios out over and over. Helps keep me occupied. And sometimes it gets so real, you almost get excited. Like, you know, if you're thinking
Like
about
it's about to happen.
yeah.
I have definitely psyched myself out before, like, just I get overconfident, like, okay, this buck's on his way. Like, he's going to come into my sight any minute now.
Yeah.
And I just get so worked up, and then he never does. It's like,
Man.
What are you going to say, Austin?
So when you're planning out when deer are coming through, or you got to trail your pattern, are you marking trees with the rangefinder? Like, okay, this big tree's
all the
20
time.
yards. Yeah.
Constant the entire time because
Yeah.
you haven't hunted with me a whole lot. Like, we've only got, one season under our belts together?
Yeah.
You're going to find I suck at judging range. There's been many times where I shoot something, tell Tom, yeah, you know, I think he's probably like 20 yards or so, and we get up there, Tom's like, that's 12. Like, I'm terrible.
Yeah.
So I learned that at a young age. So now, while I'm running those scenarios, I am ranging pretty much every tree. And I make circles around my stand where it's like, okay, this is the 20 circle, this is a 30 circle, like just so I know right where it's at. My Uncle John took it even further, and he used to spray paint yardages on trees. Like, because he only had like 3 tree stands he hunted, and all the way around there'd be orange spray paint, 20, 30, 40, all the way around. And it was, honestly, I started when Tom and I first got into hunting, we hunted a lot out there, and it actually helped me a ton as a young hunter, being able to like see that.
Obviously, it didn't help you with judging distance.
Yeah. That's
No,
why-
not at all. I think it probably ruined me on judging distance because I didn't have to.
Yeah.
My dad did that when we were growing up, like with the crossbow. I was shooting blind. He had those those little flags you put in the ground. So like 20, 30, 40, 50. And I mean, that really helped a lot. Just growing up and seeing deer, okay, that's 20 yards, 30 yards. The scrape's 50 or whatever.
Yeah, my dad never did anything with like marking. He would have a rangefinder and he would ask me like,
That's
how,
probably
how
why you're so
far do
much
you-
better.
That's what my grandpa used to do with me. And I tell you what, inside 80, like 80 to 50, I'll be within like 3-4 yards. 50 to 0, give me 2 yards.
Yeah, that's how I'm pretty spot on with.
I can hit
yardages.
within 10.
Nick's like, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, that's what rangefinders are for. Talk shit on it, I don't really care. It works for me.
I am, even though I am good at it, I have my rangefinder in my hand all the time. As soon as I get in the stand, I'm ranging stuff, and even though I know that tree is 23 yards, I'm going to range it 17 more times.
There's stands I've been hunting for a decade that I still check every time I get up. Like, is that tree move at all?
Still
Tree got a
22
little
yards.
bit bigger since the last time I was
Like,
here.
oh man, he's 19 now. Yeah. Well,
I think those are very helpful things to do. Like I think I've said it a bunch of times, but
I think there's
make sure
a lot
you're
of,
always ranging things.
there's a lot of things you can occupy yourself with in the stand in slow periods that are beneficial to the hunt.
Yeah, not just playing on your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've in the last 2 years I've gotten way better because I made a conscious decision and like to not use my phone while I'm hunting, because I used to, like, there was a couple, probably like 2-3 seasons where I got no habit of, like, if it was slow, just start scrolling Facebook, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I'll check Instagram, and then it's like, oh, maybe
Now
go back
there's
to
a buck
Facebook.
going by.
Yeah, awesome, great.
That's great.
It was empty, Tom. Don't worry.
Doesn't look like it.
It is,
There's
it is now.
It is empty.
But so, like, in the last probably 2, maybe 3 seasons, I've told myself, like, hey, we're done with it. But just because, like, I had no intentions of spending that much time on your phone. It's just like you go to check Facebook really quick,
Yeah.
and then you're on Instagram, and then you're Snapchatting. It's like now it's just I keep my phone in my pocket, and Apple Watch has really helped me too. Just
Yeah,
because
you don't have to pull your
I don't
phone.
have to, because that was the biggest issue. Like, I would get a text and then
And
check
now
the
you're on
text,
your phone.
and then you're on your phone, and then you're checking Facebook, Instagram, and the whole 9. So now I get a text, and I can just quickly see what it is, if it's something I need to answer or not, and then
Mm-hmm.
answer it right from the watch. Just makes it so much easier. I can have a bunch of preset stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can just put "fuck you, Tom" as one of my presets for entry season. Just
That
so-
one's important.
yeah. But yeah, so it's just like you said, there's a lot of things you can do to keep yourself occupied, like checking
keep
range.
your mind on the hunt.
Yeah, checking range and playing every possible scenario you possibly could. And like Tom said, to the point where you're psyching yourself out, like, oh my God, he's coming.
Is that a deer over there?
Yeah, then sometimes the story happens in your mind perfectly with a squirrel behind you to where it like
Yeah.
really sets you off.
Squirrels are dicks.
Come
You
like October 25th, I like to really pass my time with some aggressive call sequences.
Yeah, I know you do.
It's
I can
worthwhile.
hear them from like 70 yards out, just bang, and just bleh, bleh.
Non-stop.
Yeah.
As soon as you finish one sequence, you start
Now,
the next.
realistically, like every 15 minutes is a good benchmark.
For rattling?
Tom does
I-
everything in
Oh, yeah.
every
Every-
15 minutes.
yeah.
Tom, why don't you just... for
He's
the
got a
list-
5-minute
yeah,
sequence.
for the
and then
listeners
15
and
minutes of-
Austin's sake, run us through the sequence that you do like every 15 minutes for the rut. Which Tom's a November killer, so
He is.
you can't say it doesn't work.
So the first thing I like to do is let out some estrus doe bleats.
Can you sound those out in case people don't
No.
know what they are?
Nope, you can look it up on your own time. Wait a little bit,
How long?
a minute or so.
Hmm.
And then I like to hit them with a trail grunt. You know, just a short burp, burp, burp.
How come you'll do those but not the...
Because I can't do a estrus doe bleat. So that's like a buck. He's coming down that trail that doe was. And then not long after that, maybe like 45 seconds, I hit him with a good challenge grunt and then a snort wheeze. Like, okay,
Let's
there's
hear it.
another buck in this area. And then I give it about a minute and I do some aggressive rattling.
How's your rattling start?
I take my rattle bag and smash it against the tree as hard as I can. I learned that from Stan Potts.
That's aggressive.
Yeah.
But
And a lot of times too, like what I'll do is like I'll grab a branch and then I'll rattle with my rattle bag against my leg while I'm raking a branch through the other branches of my tree.
you're really painting a picture up there, old Bob Ross. Huh?
Oh yeah.
Might be Tom's new archery nickname, Bob Ross.
Bob Ross. Tom Ross.
That's good. All right. Tom, you're now Tom Ross.
Touche.
I don't think touche fits there, does it?
Oh.
When in Rome.
Anyway,
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us again. Austin, thank you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Glad we had to talk you into it. You're just going to be
Yeah, I was just be
Live.
chilling on the couch here. Glad I could.
Tom. I don't know what we had to do to get you back in the studio, but we're glad to have you. John gave you some shit at the Palooza. Said you haven't been on.
oh really? Did he?
Oh yeah, he was talking. He's like, yeah, where's Tom? I'm like, yeah, we got to give him some shit.
That's funny.
But
Tell him I was preparing for that party.
no, I didn't. I said he just sits at home, does nothing. He's actually in the downstairs while we podcast.
Yeah. Doesn't want
No,
any part of it.
I don't remember what I told him. I was probably drunk. Anyways, thanks again, everybody, for listening. For I think this might be like 190 episodes.
We should look into that because if we're getting close to 200, that's a big one. That's
Well, I know what it is.
we'll have to
like
get, we'll have
after,
to get drunk for it or something.
yeah, get back to old Tom, like episode 6 drunk.
Yeah.
The people would love it.
Yeah. So if you guys have been listening for that long, you guys all know what to do at this point. Get outside.